My name is Pat McGrath. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a visual artist and a facilitator, and I'm a model maker.
There you go. There you go. This is going to take a while. Pat, of all those things, when you were a kid growing up in Carberry, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was the stage in your heart, do you think? Was that something that you were kind of interested in, no?
No, I had no interest in it. I mean, we used to go, my dad worked in Guinness's, so we used to go to the Guinness's concert every year. That was the only kind of theatrical thing we went to over in the Rupert Guinness Hall, which is a fabulous theatre. But we used to go to the Guinness concert every year, and that was it. Like, we never went to the Panto or anything like that, you know.
And it wasn't something you didn't go there and kind of go, oh, life in a bit for me. It was just kind of something you did as a family.
No, no. The first kind of actor I came across was David O'Mara. You know David O'Mara?
Yeah.
He was in my class in school, and he was in DYT, and I went to see him in a couple of things that weren't with DYT. I went to see him in the Blue Macushla, Tom Murphy play in the Mansion House, and I went to see him in Down All the Days, the Christy Brown memoir, out in, I don't know where it was out in Balls Bridge somewhere.
Yeah.
But he was the only actor I knew, like,
yeah.
You know?
And when you were growing up, like when you were a young lad, then, like, were you kind of into reading and into, like, were the arts around you?
Well, I was always interested in art. I was always good at drawing and stuff like that. I was, would be sent around. I'd do a drawing in primary school, and then I'd be sent around to the other classes to show off me little drawings, But the house here was full of books. My mom was mad about going to auctions, and she would just buy boxes and boxes and boxes of books, like, and I would just go through them all.
Wow.
There was a set, they bought a set of encyclopedias, the Arthur Me children's encyclopedias, and it was very British and very Victorian, but it had a section in it of stories from around the world, and like, this was a 10-volume set that I read, like, from back to front, and just reading stories and stuff like that. And my sisters were all, my 4 sisters, and they were all big readers, like, as well.
And was the drawing thing something you kind of got into at an early age and enjoyed, Pat, even when you kind of was displaying your drawing a thing for you, or was it like a more private thing?
Don't really know. Like, it wasn't a thing that we did in school. Like, we didn't do art in secondary school. We did it on our half day. We had a half day on a Wednesday, and a woman who was a student in NCAD, Patricia Kelly, she used to come in on Wednesday afternoon, and we used to have to pay her, I think it was £2, and we did art. I did art in my Leaving Cert, like, I got a B in art in my Leaving Cert. But she was the one who kind of turned me on to art.
Okay.
And she had me, like, when I was in 5th and 6th year, she had me going to performance art pieces, like, seeing Nigel Rolfe and people like that, burying himself in flour, or performance art weeks down in the NCAD, was down where the City Art Centre used to be. They had a premises there. So I'd be going along there, like, I was only 16, 17, like, seeing all this wild stuff, So that kind of, and then she was the one who said to me, you should go to art college. And then when I had my career guidance with the head Christian brother in the school, he said, what do you want to do now when you leave school? And I was like, I think I'll go to art college. And he went, no, that's a mad thing. And my dad died the last year I was in college, or in school, in secondary school. And then I thought, I'm going to go to art college. But that wouldn't have been a thing, like, if I would have went to work in Guinness's. Up until the time my mother died, which is only like 10, 12 years ago, she was still saying to me, you could still get a job in Guinness's.
And come here, like, that's a big jump from, like, from drawing in primary school and showing it around classes to being immersed in the more contemporary performance art side. Was that kind of a bit of a head shift?
Well, no, because because of Patricia Kelly, my art teacher, like she was in her final year in college, and there was a program on the telly as well at that time called The Shop at the New. I can't remember the guy who did it. He was a big Australian journalist, but he was doing all this thing about the New York artists and the expressionists and all that, and I was dug into it. Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg. I was like, wow, this is fabulous. Like, I'd grown up watching Blaheen on the telly, drawing stuff like that. So yeah, again, like I'd no ambition to be anything else. Like, it was just her suggestion to me, you should go to art college. I was like, okay, that sounds interesting.
So you ignored the Christian brother, obviously, and
well, yeah. See, when I did apply to go to art college, I didn't get in. So I think in the summer after I left school, me and this other guy in my class, Johnny Marr, we went up to Cattleborough Barracks and we put our names down to join the army. So when I didn't get into college, and it was 1980. There were no jobs.
Yeah.
So I joined the army. I was in the army for 3 years, and then I went to art college when I got out of the army.
And what was that like? I mean, that's again a shift from a potential career in Guinness's to want to be an art student, and then fucking on joining the army.
Yeah, well, my dad had been in the army during the emergency,
right?
And all his brothers had been in the army, and my grandfather had fought in Gallipoli and at the Battle of the Somme and at Wipers, and my uncle Tim had been in the army and in the British Army and had fought all the way from Normandy to to the end of the war. And so I grew up kind of hearing all those stories and watching war films, and I thought, I'll join the army. Little knowing that the army isn't anything like it's like it was at the time anyway. It was like a glorified security corps service, bank escorts and court escorts and cash escorts. That was it, like, So I did that for 3 years, and I didn't want to do it any more than that.
Was it hard, Pat? I mean, was it a hard graft?
Some of it was, yeah, it was. It was kind of interesting as well. I became a military policeman, so that was. I mean, I didn't go into I got best student on my course, my military police course, and I was offered a place in the special investigation branch, and I wasn't good at it, so I ended up, because like my heart wasn't in it. I had like pulling up people. Like, we went out to investigate this thing one day, and we had to call into the guards down in the Bridewell. And me and this other military policeman, I didn't know what it was about. He just said, "You come with me." We went into the military police, or into the Bridewell, and he asked to see a detective, and the detective came down and says, "What is it, lads? Is it guns? Is it what is it? Is it robbery? What is it?" And the guy I was with said, "We're investigating the theft of 2 pounds of cheese out of an army jeep in Church Street." And I was like, your man looked at us as if we were mental, and said, "Oh, it's, So I spent a lot of time, doing gate duty and doing security duty on various barracks around there.
And were you drawing? Were you kind of still actively engaged in your art?
Yeah, I kind of still kept in touch with that art teacher, Patricia Kelly, because she was saying to me, she said, "What are you doing like with yourself? Like, you shouldn't be you're not the type of person who should be in the army." So all the time I was in the army, I was still drawing and stuff like that, and still going to galleries and stuff like that, and still listening to her what I should be going to see and things like that. So when I got out of the army, I think it was a year out of the army, and I applied for college, and I got into DIT to do fine art.
And was there a sense of kind of finding a space that you kind of felt not home, but like it felt kind of a space where you could get to express yourself in there?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things about the army was that you didn't have an awful lot of choices to make. Like, you got up in the morning, you didn't go, "What will I wear today?" you know, or what will I do? Like you knew what you were wearing and you knew what you were doing, you know.
Yeah.
So when I went to college, like it was wild, you know. I went from an all male, well, like I went to an all boys school. I went straight into the army. I think out of 40 people in my year in college, I think about 30 of them were women. You know, a lot of my tutors were women as well. And, you know, at that time, I grew a big beard then. I let my hair grow long. I was wearing, you know, I wore a poncho for a long time.
There you go.
I had a great time in college. And I had some brilliant tutors. I had Vincent Brown, not the journalist, the sculptor who made Mr. Screen. Yeah. He was my tutor in second year and third year. I mean, there was I decided to do sculpture. So there were only 3 of us doing sculpture, and we used to just hang out with him all the time. And there was another guy, Robert McColgan, who was a fantastic educator. He just had, he would argue with you. If you said black, he'd say white, just to see what you'd say.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So he would provoke you all the time. And I don't know what it's like now, but at 10, the tutors used to just come to the pub with us, you know, and I don't know, that's probably frowned on now, but yeah. So we just talked to them all the time. We just.
And what was your art then? What was kind of what were you kind of doing?
Well, when I was in DIT, I was living in Ballymun. I lived in Ballymun all the time. I was in college. I lived on the top floor of Sean McDermott Tower. So for my final year project, I made these huge steel towers, like they were, you know, 8 foot tall, all brightly coloured with different things coming out of them and all. And I don't know what they'd be like, but I did a lot of painting as well, a lot of portraiture and stuff like that. But it's kind of strange. Like now, when you go into college, you're not kind of tied into anything. But the sculpture staff kind of were going to me, "What are you doing? You shouldn't be painting." And you know, it was all compartmentalized.
Yeah.
You know, if you were a sculptor, you were a sculptor. If you were a painter, you were a painter. If you were a printmaker, you were a printmaker. But I didn't kind of see it like that. I just kind of wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's gas actually kind of, you know, living and working and being kind of, you know, influenced by the Ballymun Towers and kind of, I mean, obviously you've kind of been a long association with Axis, but also a few years back you kind of ended up making towers for the fourth act movie.
Yeah, for Turlough Kelly and Andrew Keogh for the fourth act documentary. We made a complete scale model, about 1/20th scale of Ballymun inside the old shopping centre.
It was incredible. I mean, that must have taken a huge amount of work.
It took 4 months, and at some stages it was just me in the shopping centre, and the shopping centre was empty, and it was the old Tesco's that I was in. So security guards would lock me in, and I would work there all day. And then Andy or Turlough would come and let me out. But that was a fascinating thing, because at the end of it, the public came in. They used it as a backdrop to interview people about the regeneration. But at the end, they opened it to the public, and the public came in, and we had people telling me I was there for some of it, and they'd go, because we did little things. We made little pigeon coops on some of the balconies, and we did washing lines and stuff. And we made little container shops, and people would come in and go, "That container shop wasn't there. It was over there," you know. And then they tell you stories and yeah, it was fascinating to do that.
And come here, go back then. So you have that kind of very different experience, say, in college from the army, and you kind of finding your poncho and your art, and then on leaving that path, was that kind of a big jump again? Do you mean, was that kind of like exiting college and kind of looking into the future?
Yeah, well, I got into acting while I was in college, just through talking to people in pubs. Some people were doing plays. I'm not sure if there was any kind of drama soccer on in DIT, but Marina Carr's sister Deirdre was in my class. So we used to go and see Marina Kerr's plays. You know, she was doing plays for Gaiety School and other plays in the project, and we used to go and see them. And I was involved in, I don't know who was talking about it to you, I was involved in the Parade of Innocence.
Yeah.
Well, making stuff for that. And I got involved, my history of art tutor was Joe O'Byrne.
Okay, I was going to ask you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Prior to meeting Joe, well, I met Joe, I knew Joe through the college, like he was my tutor, but one day I was sitting in a pub and it was just friends of mine. There was a woman there with them, Dorina McGanna, and she turned around to me and said, "What do you do?" "I'm directing a play. You could be in my play." And I went, "Yeah, okay, yeah, sure." And for no other reason than I was just open to things. I was in college and I was going, I could do this, yeah, why not, you know?
Yeah.
So play was called Shock Treatment, and it was on up in Christchurch in the Synod Hall. And I had a very small part in it. It was kind of a musical. It was written by a guy called Pat Courtney, who's on the radio now. He's a DJ.
Yeah.
But it was Beg, Borrow and Steal Theatre Company.
God, yeah.
A small part in it. But anyway, Joe saw me in it, you know, and he said, "I'm doing plays. Do you want to be in a play?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." Again, just because I'm easily led. Dorina McGanna's father was Tomas McGanna, and he saw me in the play, and he said, "Oh, you're very good at that. You could be an actor." Could I be an actor? Yeah, why not, sure? You know. And then I did a couple of plays with Joe, and when I left college, like a week after I left college, I was in Germany with Joe at a festival in Gießen, near Frankfurt, doing Wojciech, you know, playing the drum major in Wojciech, and seeing all kind of European theatre, you know, Polish theatre companies, you know, German theatre companies, and stuff that you wouldn't really see here then. And then after doing a few plays with Joe, I met, it was through the Parade of Innocence actually, I met Paul Mercier. Because Parade of Innocence, they had like 100 people dressed up as policemen doing choreographed movement. And Paul, we were in a big warehouse down on the docks, I think, and we were doing this choreographed movement. And Paul said to me, "You're very good at this. How are you so good at this?" And I was like, "Because I was a military policeman, I know." And so then after that, he asked me to be in Home.
Wow.
You know? And then I was doing a play with Joe O'Byrne, Pat McKay play, Local County Lonesome. There was a fella in it called Ger Fitzmahony, who died since, but he was great. We were playing two butchers. We would spend all our time together, and he got me in to see his agent, Lorraine Brennan, who's still my agent. And she got me an audition for Borstal Boy. And so within a very short time, I did that Local County Lonesome tour. I did Borstal Boy, and I did Home. And then I started getting little bits of film work and stuff. And Paul, I was supposed to be in the original production of Budlia, but I was off in Spain with Joe O'Byrne, doing a co-production with a Spanish company and a Finnish company for 4 months. And, again, saw all kinds of wild. Went to see like Sam Shepard plays in Spanish, and then when I was in Finland, you know, I remember seeing The Good Shoulder Svek in Swedish and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, and then when I came back from Spain, I was in Budlia, and we went to Poland with the Passion Machine, like 40 actors, something like that, went to Poland, and it was fabulous, you know.
Go back there a bit, because the kind of, when you're talking about all those people and companies and time, I remember that time very, very well, and there was a real ground up drive into Irish cultural and civic life. I mean, I think, that parade, it was an incredible thing, not just in and of itself, but, what it meant and kind of,
Mhm.
it was the first, well, it was one of those times when art and activism kind of really coalesced, and not just in numbers, but in the way it was kind of delivered. But also out of that, I mean, to be around with Joe at the beginning of all that, and then with Paul Mercier, I mean, was there a time during that path that you kind of went, geez, I'm really enjoying, that you kind of went, this feels like something different now?
I don't know if I ever kind of sat back and thought about it.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it. I mean, I was having a great time. It was just, continuously doing plays. And if we weren't doing plays in Co-Motion, the company that Joe Bourne and Declan Gorman set up, if we weren't doing plays, then we'd be reading plays.
Yeah.
People would make suggestions and we'd read a play, and go, no, we're not doing that, or whatever, And there was lots of things, there was a lot of stuff on, like, that you could go to, and yeah, it was a great time in theatre as well, and there was all kinds of little, like, I remember going to see stuff by Eva Donna, Sean Ross and Kevin Reynolds and Seamus Moran and all, stuff that they were doing. And then different people would be coming to work in Co-Motion, or I'd go to work with Paul Mercier and stuff like that. Just being in a room with like 40 people.
Yeah.
Rehearsing is like a phenomenal thing to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was going to say to you. I mean, there was the companies you spoke of, and what was going on. There was an internationalism to them as well. I mean, it wasn't just about Dublin voices and rural voices. Yeah. It was also the influence of European and international work, but also the scale of an independent and a very independent company like Passion Machine being able to do that scale of work is incredible now looking back.
Yeah, I mean, Paul put together his thing. I think it was called Songs of the Reaper. It was a festival, and I can't remember how many plays. It was on over 2 weeks, I think, in the project. And Co-Motion were doing a play. It was Joe Bourne's play, but it was more or less Co-Motion, but we were all being paid by the Passion Machine. And we were doing a play called The Last Potato. And we were rehearsing in St. Andrew's Resource Centre down on Pier Street. And Barabbas were doing a play called Floating Penguins on the other side of the partition. They were rehearsing that, and then we'd all come together in the project. People doing plays. There was a Deirdre Hines play. There was all kinds of plays on.
Yeah.
Or Deirdre Kinnan. Was it Deirdre? I can't remember now. Anyway, all sorts of people doing plays.
Yeah, and I think at the same time as well, you mentioned like the City Arts Centre building was in full flight. You wet paint. You kind of, it was very rooted in its kind of location as well. The work, it was phenomenal time. You mentioned Declan Gorman, and a lot of people who are still in the industry kind of emerged during that time, and it seemed to have been a magnet to like-minded people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And were you still painting around that time?
I was. I mean, I did that thing when I came out of college first. I had a studio over a pub, which is a terrible idea, to have a studio over a pub, because you run up a kind of a slate, if you're allowed a slate. Me and this other fella, Colin O'Leary, who is now forging a career as a screenwriter in the States. We shared a studio and on Hill Street above a pub called Billy Doyle's, which is gone now. But I got involved. I had a couple of exhibitions and stuff like that. I remember when we came out of art college, me and Colin, we sat down and said, well, here we are, we're out of college now, and we're visual artists. I suppose the next thing now to do is have an exhibition. And we wrote to all the galleries. We sat down, I had an old typewriter, and I wrote a letter to, we we photocopied the letter and we sent it off to all the galleries in Dublin, like the Taylor Gallery and all these places, and Temple Bar. Said, just told them that one of us was a sculptor and one of us was a painter, and we had a body of work, and at their earliest possible convenience, they would be allowed to exhibit our work. Because that was the one thing, like we were never told or taught anything about the art world. It was all about expressing yourself, and I learned how to weld, I learned how to put copper together, I learned how to paint, but I didn't know anything about the art world, and kind of quickly discovered that I wasn't all that into. I love making art, I love talking to people about art, I love selling art, but I'm not into the kind of gallery system. You work for a year, then you have an exhibition, you sell a quarter of it or a third of it. What happens to the rest of it? I still have paintings that I made in the early 90s. I tend to give a lot of work away though. But yeah, so I was still doing all that. I also did stuff like masks and sets for promotion and for other people. I remember doing a set for Irish Modern Dance Company, and did bits and pieces, masks and stuff. Look, I still do that. I built a life-size figure of Egg for she's gonna kill me. I can't remember her name. Swallow and
it'll come back to you.
Yeah. Anyway, life-size figure of Peg a couple of years ago, and I still make masks and stuff like that for people.
And do you still see that kind of there are forms rather than defining things? Like you seem to move very fluidly between kind of your different expressions. Do you know what I mean? Like, and now you've added writing to it over the, like, were you writing back then, or was writing a thing that was kind of happening back then?
For me, no. I never thought about writing anything. I remember, like, a lot of people in the Passion Machine would be writing stuff. I remember someone saying to me, "Are you writing, Pat?" No. What would I write? And it was only really, I went to Finland for a while. I met a woman in Finland who I'm now married to, but I went to stay in Finland for a while, and she turned out to have a typewriter. And I thought, if you're a jobbing actor in Dublin, you get sent to an awful lot. Well, if you're lucky, you get sent to an awful lot of auditions, and you get to read a lot of stuff, and a lot of it, to be honest, is crap. So eventually it dawns on you. You just think, I could write better stuff than this. That was what influenced me to start writing. And I was over in Finland, and just for my own kind of amusement, I was writing screenplays about artists and stuff like that, people I'd been to college with and stuff. And it was only when I did I did film courses and stuff like that, and I sent in things to film-based shorts and all that. None of them were successful. It was only when I did Showing a Bag. Veronica Dias prompted me to do Showing a Bag. I had done something with a guy called Barry Casey and Roxana Niclean in the theatre clubs, a little festival that they used to run. He had written a 10-15 minute play, and I was in that. And a lot of people from the Fringe came to see that, and Veronica was saying to me, "You should do Showing a Bag." And she was saying, like, I said, "What would I do it about? What would I do it about?" And she said, "Do it about that modelling stuff. That's fascinating, making models on your club and all that you're in." So it was only then that I kind of got back into writing seriously.
And sorry, just to go back there, because that's interesting, because that was an amazing piece of work, but also seemed to kind of fuse an awful lot of, the military, the sculptural model make. When did the model making thing happen for you, Pat? Was that kind of?
When I was a kid, Mark, I used to. My dad got me into model making. My dad was always doing things with his hands, making stuff, and he taught me how to put a cross in a bottle and stuff like that, and taught me how to do carpentry and things, and got me a thing called a fret saw, which is a model maker saw. and he bought me a couple of models to keep me quiet, I think, while he was doing stuff. Because when I was a kid, I was fascinated with stuff that he'd be doing. And I remember he was doing something one time, and he was sawing a piece of wood. And I think my mom was saying something to him, and he was saying something back, and he wasn't paying attention to me. And I put my finger down on the pencil line that he was sawing along, and he sawed my finger I still have a big scar on my finger. So he didn't mind me being with him, but he'd like me to be occupied with my own stuff. So I got into modelling, and there was a shop up the street from us, the Bamba, in Phibsborough, and they used to have all these models, big models in the window and stuff. And any kind of pocket money I would get, I would run straight down there. And then I joined a club when I think it was about 12 or 13. There was a club in Dublin, a modelling club, and I was in that for a couple of years. And then when I joined the army, I kind of lost all interest in that.
Yeah.
And only came back to it then in my 30s when I think someone gave me a model. An artist I knew was using models in her work, and she was going off to America, and there was a pile of models in the corner of her studio. And she said, "Do you want those?" And I went, "Yeah, I do." And I started making models again.
Wow, okay.
When I got into it, and the whole internet thing was taken off then.
And now you're kind of one of the leading lights in the Dublin modelling scene.
Yeah. I say that with no modesty at all.
But yeah, I think there's also a sense of, I mean, we'll go back in a minute, but just talk about small plastic wars. Like, that's quite a step though, to kind of to go, feck it, I'll go for showing it back, because once you're in there, you have to do it then. And I think how did Alan get involved in all of that?
It's a kind of a daunting thing, actually, because I remember going into the ITI to pitch that. I remember walking into town. I was going, I had no idea. I'd read stuff about pitching ideas for films and all. I was going, what am I going to hang this on? And I went into Easton's and I was looking at things, and I saw this book, and I can't remember her name, Barbara Kinghofer or something like that, The 7 Stages of Grief. And I thought, yeah, it's a 70-minute play. I'll do 10 minutes on each stages of grief. It was like, the play is about a guy who loses his job and becomes kind of manically involved in modelling to occupy himself, and it takes over his life. So I thought I'd do the 7 stages of grief. And when I walked into the room, like, there were 7 or 8 people sitting around the table. Like, the whole staff at the ITI was there, and they were all like, so I was like, okay, it's based on the 7 stages. It ended up not being anything to do with the 7 stages of grief, but as a lot of the stuff in the fringe, like, they ask you for, 100 words about what your play is about. They ask you for that, like, in January. And by the time you get to do the play in September, it's completely changed. People are reading the brief going, this play isn't about that at all. But, it was great in a way, because once I got it, I kind of said, okay, well, I have to do this. And I would go in to the ITI or to the fringe, the little small office in the fringe that people would write in. And I would drop my daughter to school, I'd leave the car at the school, I'd get the bus into town and sit there till 2:30 and sit there and write till about 2:30 and go back, like, my daughter from school. And every 2 weeks I was meeting Gavin Costick. He was dramaturging, and I'd have to kind of read out what I'd written, And the first time I did it, like, I had 10, 12 pages written first 2 weeks, and I read it out just to him in an office. And he said, yeah, well, at least it's not shit. I was like, are a lot of them shit? And he went, you'd be surprised. So the difficult thing with Gavin was I would have to stop him, because he turned out to have been involved in wargaming, and Dungeons and Dragons, and he knew a lot about modelling and stuff. And he would go off on tangents. What was the best tank of World War II and stuff, and we'd be talking about that. And I go, Gavin, what about the play? He go, yeah. And he gave me some. He he was pointing me in different directions and saying things to me, like, there's a kind of rule of three. If you have something once, you can come back to it, and then you come back to it again. And the more you come back to it those 3 times, it'll be funnier. Don't come back to it a fourth time, but you should do this. And I was going, yeah, yeah. And I was taking the notes and kind of ignoring them and then coming back to them.
Yeah.
I ended up following all the notes he gave me. And then, you'd meet people. You'd be in the little office in the Fringe, and you go out to the kitchen to make a cup of tea, and you'd meet Aisling or Emma, and you'd be going, how are you getting on in there? You're writing the play, yeah. You go, yeah, yeah, yeah. You go, great, yeah. And he just took it for granted that you were writing this play. So it was like their unbounded confidence in you. You'd kind of just write it. And I had a great director. Alan King directed it. And I knew, like, they asked me who I wanted to direct the play, and I said, Alan King. Because I knew that we were on the same wavelength, comedy-wise, because I'd worked a lot with Alan in The Passion Machine.
Yeah.
And I knew he was very funny, and I knew he was a good director. So we had a great time, and we did a lot of, like, the first time I read the play, the full play, it was like, I think it was 2.5 hours long or something. It was an abnormal length, and we had to get that down to 70 minutes. And we did it, like, Alan thought, you don't really need that. I know it's great, it's very funny, we don't need it. I was like, okay, yeah. So, I took on board everything that Alan and Gavin said.
But it took off, Pat, then. I mean, that went on,
Yeah, it did.
Radio play.
I was very lucky that I met Tom. Tom will kill me as well. I can't remember his second name now. He produced it for me after the Fringe, and he got me into the Bealtaine Festival. So we did, like, I think 14 venues around Ireland, probably more. And then we did more venues, and it kept going. And I ended up going to Finland with us. I ended up going to Paris to the Irish Centre and to Theatre Clwyd in Wales. And I did it for the Fizz Fest up on the Brian Boru, which was a great night because it was a tiny stage. And I mean, it was always on a tiny stage, but I literally couldn't move. I was like in one spot. The depth of the stage was only about 3 feet, and it was about 6 feet wide. So, and it was packed. It was like the Brian Boru was packed. I think that was the last time I did it.
And is it radio play as well, was it? Did you record it?
Yeah. Kevin Reynolds came in to see it in Bewley's, because I did a long stretch in Bewley's, and he came in to see it. And he said, look, send me the play, and I'll get back to you, And then out of the blue one day, he did get back to me, and he said, how do you want to do it? Do you want to broaden it out? Because there was loads of characters in it. And I said, no, I'm happy enough to just do it like the way it was done on stage. And he said, well, it's too long, like 70 minutes, and we can only do 59 minutes or something like that. And I was going, that's grand, we can do that, And me and Alan went in, and we recorded it, and they made suggestions, and I was going, no, it has to make sense. You can't just randomly lift like 5 minutes out of there. And so we cut various scenes, and it still all made sense. And it's still up on the RTE player, small plastic board.
So take me back then to that, from kind of, I mean, I met you when we worked together on Druid debut series back in 20 years ago. But around that time, you were doing quite a lot of work in TV and film as well, weren't you? I mean, that was kind of...
Yeah. I mean, I'm great... I suppose I'm a character actor. Like, I'm never... I had done a little bit in Fair City, and it worked out funny because Alan King had been in it at the same time, and a couple of other people. We'd all been brought in by the same producer, and then that producer left, and the 6 or 7 of us that he brought in, the new producer just got rid of us. It was a big wake-up call for me. It was the first kind of TV I'd done, Fair City, and I'd come from working with the Passion Machine and Commotion and stuff, big ensemble shows, or if you had an idea, you just said it. You just said, well, why couldn't we do this, So I remember being on the set in Fair City. I was playing the barman. I was brought in because the regular barman had he'd become ill, and I was brought in to replace him. And one of the actors was having a problem with something about our motivation, and I knew her. I'd worked with her in the passion or in Commotion, and I just said, as I would have done in Commotion, "Well, why don't you do this?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I could do that." And she turned to the director and she said, "Yeah, I could do that, couldn't I?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And then we broke for lunch, and the director said, "Oh, Pat, can I have a word?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "You know that when you were suggesting to do that," I was going, "Yeah." He said, "Don't ever fucking do that again." He says, "I'm the director. This isn't. You're not in a theatre company now. Like I tell the actors what to do." Oh, okay. And it was good advice, actually, because there's only room for one director and in a film anyway, and in a lot of theatre companies as well. But yeah, no, I was lucky. I got to do a lot of film work. Through Lorraine Brennan, like she was great. She got me into a lot of stuff, into see people. And again, you're working with people, and you're going, this is fabulous. Like, I'm working with, Stephen Ray, or I'm working with like on TV stuff. Like I remember working with Neil Tobin, and then I had been in Borstal Boy with Neil Tobin, and that's again like there was just watching him, like watching consummate professionals work and learning from them, you know.
Yeah.
He was great, and you get people would have funny reactions to I was the barman in Fair City, and I remember going in to pay the bill in the gas company, and the woman was going, she would kind of go, "You were on the telly last night." I was going, "Yeah. Now look, I'm only paying part of this bill, so I don't want to get cut off." And she was like, "I saw you on the telly." I was going, "Yeah, about the bill, I don't want to get cut off." And she was like, "Yeah. God, that's great. Is that real beer they have on Thursday?" But yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because a lot of I think from people who kind of move across kind of genres like that, I think it is kind of a wake up call in relation to the way stuff is made, but then a wake up call in remembering that you are in people's living rooms every night, and it's a very different relationship.
You're kind of gone frozen on me there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's a very different relationship with an audience to kind of be sitting in their living rooms, rather than being on.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's
my mother had a friend, Maisie, and I was sitting in the house chatting to them one night, and I wasn't living with my man at the time. I was, but I remember this woman. She was looking at her watch and looking at me, and I was going, "Are you all right, Maisie? You'll have to be somewhere." She said, "No, I don't have to be anywhere, but Fair City's on in half an hour." Yeah, but like it's not live. Like
I compared in relation to through all that time, and I mean, I think you said the word character actor, and I think that kind of it's not probably the right phrase. I mean, I think you like any great actor is able to immerse yourself in the character. So I think there's a sense of, I mean, certainly that's been my experience of kind of working with you over the years. I may get to that in a second, but around that time was like you mentioned a facilitator at the beginning of when you introduced yourself. Like, what are you kind of engaging with, say, young people around that time as well? Like around the time when you were kind of doing Fair City or did that come later?
No, I had, it came before now. When I left college, I'd done little bits of teaching, like sub-teaching in secondary schools, and very quickly learned that I wasn't a teacher in a formal kind of a setting. But I got a job. Somebody went on holidays and recommended me to cover their job in a youth reach out in Ballyfermot.
Right.
And they kind of asked me to stay on. So I was working in the youth reach in Ballyfermot, and I was teaching art to them. I was doing art with them. And these were kids who had been thrown out of school, and this was kind of their last chance education kind of thing. So I was working with them, and I was doing a lot more than art. Like, I was getting brought in to do outdoor pursuits, because you always have to have two facilitators, you know, or depending on the amount of people, two or three facilitators. So I had a great time. I loved that job. It was tough, because the kids were tough kids. There was one kid I used to teach, and he was brilliant. I used to teach photography to them, and this kid was brilliant. He was brilliant at it. He had a great imagination, and he would come in and go, "Pat, I saw this thing in a book. Could we do that? You know, double exposures and stuff that the rest of them just weren't interested in or didn't want to do." And we were doing it with him, but his story was that he wasn't allowed in Ballyfermot unless he was with us. Like, he was on, I think he was on bail or something from Pat's. But if he was with us and he was in Ballyfermot, that was all right. Like, but if he was stopped by the cops and he was on his own, he was going back to Pat's, you know. So yeah, it was great. And then what happened was, like, that was in 91, 92. And then I started getting, you know, back-to-back plays, and I said to them, look, I'm not going to take 3 weeks off and then come back, and then take 3 weeks off and then come back, and look, be going into the youth reach during the day and doing a play at night. Like, I just can't do it. Like, so yeah, so that's when I got mainly into the acting, and then I kind of came, you know, like every actor, you get a lean period, and I went back to college. I did a diploma in youth arts in Maynooth, although it was run up in Drumcondra.
When was that, Pat?
2005, maybe. Shortly before I came out to the Axis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm thinking there when you're talking, I mean, what's really amazing, what's kind of inspirational about you is that kind of, it's all the one thing. Do you know what I mean? It's different outward show. And that's what really kind of is amazing to be around. Because I you know, around that 2004 and 5 and 6, you know, you were kind of around the time you were involved down in Devaney Gardens.
Yes. Yeah. With John Duffy.
John Duffy, from now, you know, recently deceased, from brilliant artist from Ballymun. But there used to be, John was very similar. Like, he'd be having like exhibitions, and then you'd be having exhibitions here, and but there'd be no difference between the approach in that and the approach to the work, to the artistic work you were doing with the people that you were kind of working with. And is that something that comes? Yeah. Is that something that comes natural, Pat?
Yeah, it's, I suppose, in a way, if you're working with groups, it helps, actually, you know, because it's always kind of a bit of trepidation when you go in and you meet a group for the first time. So if you're an actor, you can act as if you know them already. Do you know what I mean? Because within 2 sessions or 2 weeks or whatever, you like, it'll either work or won't. And I always think, like, I'm going to behave as if I'm already in the 2nd or 3rd week, and act as if it's working, and it'll work.
That's brilliant.
You know, and it's always like, it's like I did the stand-up thing with Dean Scurry. Yeah. And that was, I remember saying to him, I can't do stand-up, it's mad. Like, he said, it's easy, you just learn a bit, and you go in, you say it. Like, if it's funny, it's funny, and people laugh. And I always kind of treat going into a class or a situation with a new class as kind of like that, as doing stand-up. You go in, and, you know, if plan A doesn't work, you have to have plan B.
Yeah.
You know, you should know, especially if you're working with children.
Yeah.
Learn a load of stupid jokes. You know?
I mean, I'll actually put up in the description of this Access Chats the link to your poem that about the art classes here, which I think it describes it perfectly in relation to that. But I suppose also as well, I mean, it's about being around new work or new, you know, something being created in the moment, and that you can trace. For me, you can trace that right back for you, for being, you know, a visual artist, to the work of Passion Machine and Co-Motion, and you know, you seem to you seem to live in that new, like even when I was working with you down in Druid, being around it with new plays, and recently with Bang Bang, like
Yeah.
that being a very organic for you, you know, being at that point of creation. Is that something you love, Pat, being around new stuff?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, like I've never done Shakespeare. I've never I mean, I've done like I did the Play on the Stars, but that was great because I was doing that with Stephen Ray, and he was doing something very different with us.
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose from his work with Field Day, he was open to. I mean, there were some great people in that. But I mean, he was open. He was going, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And I'd say, "Well, I think I could do this." And go, I like you. He was open to suggestion and stuff like that. Which, I mean, I've done stuff in the Gate. Did a month in the country.
That's right.
And I did Serrano. And again, like they were big, huge ensemble parts, but again, they weren't really ensemble parts. There was a big cast in them, but you know, they're great as well because you have a defined thing to do. I remember going on the character I played in a month in the country. People thought I was in it for a lot more than I actually was because all the other characters were talking about me. I was the farmer who wanted to marry the young girl, you know, and that was the situation in the play. Like, in reality, I only had about 5 minutes on stage, but I came on at the beginning and I came on at the end. And I remember there was a thing at the end where I had to talk. The other actor was kind of tidying up, and I had to come on and kind of get his attention. And it was just learning the kind of, or using the craft of acting, you know, just trying to kind of tentatively get his attention and kind of go, and the audience would laugh and go, okay, well, if I do this with my hat, will they laugh? And just playing with stuff like that. I mean, when I was on tour with Small Plastic Wars, played to some very small crowds, you know?
Yeah.
Small crowds. But I remember, I can't remember where it was, but there was only about like 7 or 8 people in the audience. And I'm just going to play to them. You know, I didn't play I played to them like they were all sitting together in one part of the theatre and thought, "Oi, normally you'd play to the whole play. I'm going to play to them." Like, and I just did that and had a lot of fun doing it. You know, I didn't do anything radically different.
Yeah.
That thing of being in the thing you were talking about with new work and stuff like that, seeing new work come together. You know, I'm having Dermot Bulger there in the room with you.
Yeah.
And saying, you know, I remember he said to me, I got stuck. I got into kind of a loop in Bang Bang one day in one of I think it was a dress rehearsal or something. And he said, yeah, you got into a kind of a loop there. I always thought that part was overwritten myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dermot's a special kind of man as well. I think there's a sense of, I mean, when that play was commissioned out of our work with Dublin Culture Connects and was commissioned as part of a whole series of monologues that he wrote, and then we did a bit from it in on the Abbey stage, kind of in our way as part of this kind of day. But it's funny, talking about seeing the piece of work come alive, working with you through a rehearsal room was fascinating because we ended up talking a lot more than we kind of. But in a way, that was the work, but I suppose the specifics and Dermot's writing were kind of there to see, you know, and trying to create that world was kind of it. It was an absolute joy with you. But also then when seeing you in front of an audience for the first time with it becomes a really interesting thing, because you're right, it was a dress rehearsal. Dermot came in to see it because he wasn't going to be there, or he wasn't.
Yes, yeah.
So, but I think that sense of from one person in the Access Theatre to, like, you know, a full house in the Abbey at 3 p.m, and then seeing that magic that you weave, and I think that's fascinating, and being able to go with that, to be able to go with, and similarly the piece that I think is online somewhere, the stand-up piece that you did for that.
Oh yeah, with Dean.
But it's very you're very open to the audience, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, do you remember the day in Bewley's, the woman with the phone?
Oh,
The
God.
woman in the audience with the phone when I was doing Bang Bang, and her phone kept going off, and she answered it, and then she put it away, and then it went off again, and she managed to switch it off, and then it went off again, and she went out, and I think it was this old Golden was there, and she just wouldn't let her back in. But I was on stage, and I was going, what do you do? Like, will I stop and say, how are you getting on there with your phone or whatever, you know? And it was just, you just kind of go with it. You find yourselves in those situations and you go with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. Mentioning phones, actually, I think I was donkeys years ago when I used to act. I did a show with Team, and it was actually out in Ballymun over in St. Joseph's School. And it was, Bean Darjan had done this tent-like structure, and it was Michael West show, Jack Fell Down. Physical comedy, 4 of us in the play, and all the parents, the parents' show was squashed into the tent. And this was kind of very late 90s, and the mobile phones were just coming in, you know, in the mainstream. In the middle of the show, we were giving it a sweat and giving everything. The phone goes in the audience. The next thing you hear, this woman going, how are you? Yeah, you know, I'm at a show. I said, that's all right, yeah. Yeah, great, thanks. So in relation to, I mean, right now you're kind of, obviously, actually, this is recorded on the 1st of May for anyone finding it in years to come on the internet. But actually, tomorrow we were meant to put on Bang Bang in Fizz Fest, and then had plans to go. I suppose what's interesting, looking to touch on to you now, is you've got such a wide menu of skill sets and stuff that you do, you know, in relation to the facilitation, the arts. But has writing kind of started really shouting at you, Pat? Has that kind of...
Yeah, kind of has. Thinking about stuff. Just I have like notebooks and notebooks and notebooks. It's just kind of sitting down. I kind of need structure to do that kind of thing. You know, it was great when I was writing Small Plastic Wars. I kind of made that for myself. I would go into the office, and if I wasn't in the Fringe, I would go over to ITI and work there. So yeah, I'm kind of lazy, but I find a lot of time on my hands at the moment to do stuff. So I have been writing stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realise that this is sitting on my desk. This is probably bad. This is Bang Bang that Pat made, and we did the show together. And an old sardine or whatever but your work's extraordinary around recycled pieces. Before I let you go, Pat, the one piece that really sticks in my memory that you have done on stage here was a piece back, 2007, 8, maybe 9, by a local man in Ballymun that had sent in this kind of, wasn't really a play, it was kind of a verse poem called Abroad. And that Ray Yates, who was the director here at the time, kind of directed you in it. That was an incredible piece of writing, but also an incredibly difficult piece of writing to get on stage. Do you remember that being a great process for you?
Yeah, it was funny because Ray just approached me one day and he said, I have this script, I want you to do it. Okay. And I read it, and then we kind of, we spent a lot of time sitting around thinking, how are we going to do this? And I remember something funny, like Ray said, one day we were there, I can't remember how long it was, about an hour, I think.
Yeah, about that.
But he said, okay, let's try this. Just sit there and just say it. Just say it straight out in an ordinary kind of, in a monotone thing, and let's see what happens, you know. And I sat there and I think I was off the book and I sat there and I did it the way he wanted it, kind of monotone thing. Just, it was about a man who was an alcoholic and the way he dealt with it through his life and the way he kind of recovered. I did it in that kind of monotone thing that he said, and finished it. We're not going to do it like that. No, but it was great. It was. I liked that because it was a kind of a less is more thing. we did loads with it, and then we kind of went, no, you know, it's a simple piece. There was a couple of characters in it, so we did a couple of character voices in it. No, but it was about, I suppose it was about redemption. And it was about how a guy had, you know, he become lost through drink, and then through the intervention of one or two people had kind of clawed him. And it was a simple story.
Yeah.
But it was, and we did it on the stage with the audience sitting on the stage in a kind of a semicircle around us.
The big neon, wasn't there a neon kind of, wasn't there a neon bulb? There was, yeah, kind of over a table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, because I remember, like, Ballymun Outreach came to that. Yeah. And like, I was sitting there from the top on the stage, and they came in and they were like, oh, you know, sitting around, and I was just kind of going, how's it going? I don't think they even knew I was in the play until I stood up and started doing it. But, you know, those kind of audiences, you know, I'll tell you something. When I went to see My Son by Veronica Dias last year, 2 years ago, in Project, right? And then a week later, I went to see it in the Axis. And just through the different audience, it became a different play. You know, it was like, because the people in the Axis, I mean, it was about the inner city. But because the people in the Axis, I don't know, identified with it more or something. Those kind of audiences where you're up close to them and I don't know, the ones who relate to it more.
Yeah.
You know,
but also there's the element of
huge kind of experience.
But also there's the element of kind of danger where there is that sense of the non-expectation of what's going to happen next, even from an actor point, you know, like that people will, you know, get up and go.
Talk back to you and stuff like that. I mean, I've been to plays. I remember doing the Pat McKay play, and we were up in Donegal, and it was Deirdre Hines brought a lot of people to the play from a project she was working on, and there was a lot of country and western music in the play, and they started singing along when characters would sing snatches of the play. I remember coming off and one of the other actors going, fuck's sake, you know, you want to sort that out, like, you know, what are you talking about? I said, they're singing along with the songs. Like, what's the problem with that? Like, it's like, and you know, fair enough, I was an older actor than he was, but again, I thought, that's going to happen. You know, people who don't go to theatre and they hear a song that they know, they might sing along.
Yeah.
You know?
But that goes right back to the whole commotion, you know, to the whole passion machine, to that whole sense of that kind of bridging, not necessarily in art form, but that bridging between like gigs and theatre and the way you behave at either. Do you know what I mean? I think there was a sense around Passion Machine that it was, that it was work of an extraordinary quality, but it was there to be engaged with as well.
Yeah. He's a fascinating character to work with, Paul Mercer, you know, because I mean, we did one of the best experiences I had in the theatre was we were doing a play called Native City, and it was to be done in the theatre festival, and he was going to do Budlia, and there was another play which I wasn't in it. I was in Budlia, and he was going to do them as a trilogy over the weekend. We did Native City for a week, and then we did the 3 plays on one day.
I was there.
And the first day of rehearsal for Native City, we were in the old SFX, and we were all sitting on stage, and Paul dropped the fire curtain, and he stood there, and he made us all turn off our mobile phones, and we were all sitting there, and he just told us the story of the play. And it took place over 100 years in a church that went through. It started out being a church and ended up as a taxi cab firm, and went through all different things. Went from Queen Victoria's visit in the early part of the 20th century right up to when we did it, which I don't know when it was, 2000 or something like that. But anyway, he just stood there And he just told us the story of the play, and we were all kind of riveted. And then he told us the whole story, and he said, right, okay, so, all right, you can rehearse Budlia now, and I'll write the play. And, you know, I was saying, did anyone record that? You know, that would be a fascinating thing to have, like him just telling the story for like an hour and a half.
That was
And
incredible.
then going off and write the play. Like.
That was incredible. I was at that trilogy day. It was extraordinary.
Yeah. Again, like 30 actors in Native City, and two of them who didn't speak English, two Serbian lads, Ennis and I can't remember the other guy's name, but yeah, they didn't have any English. They'd been brought over here from Sarajevo, like straight from the war, like, you know.
Come here, I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah.
Because I could, in fact, talk to you all day. But just to say, I know that you're receiving a few messages on Facebook last night. A lot of young children who attend your art class who are dying for kind of getting you back in here.
Yeah, I miss it. I miss it terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, so we might have to come with some innovation around what, you know, 3D sculptures of Pat or something here. You know, trying to do holograms.
Holograms, yeah.
Listen, Pat, thanks a million.
All right.
I'll chat to you again soon.